Welcome back to MotoringBox. I'm Sean McKellar and we are back with the AU Fairmont, which we are in the middle of turbocharging. So in the previous video, we were having a look at the packaging of how this turbo sits down the side of the intake. But when it comes to installing these standard B-series turbo parts onto an AU, there always seems to be this 10 or 20% of customization that is required. So to install this factory exhaust manifold onto the side of the intake, you need an adapter plate. But the adapter plate spaces everything out a little bit further. But you can see, there are ramifications for things being too close and you need to sort out how you're going to fix these problems. So over the past week or so, I've been sick, but I've been down here every night just looking at it and figuring out how we can get around certain issues.
You're watching MotoringBox, proudly supported by Century Batteries.
One issue is actually this standard intake hose, which goes from the crossover up here. It hooks on right there, well it's meant to, and then this end goes down to the front of the turbo, but it's not going to fit. First of all, because of this shroud here, which goes around the power steering pump, that came out at another probably 20 mil or 30 mil, and it was getting in the way. So I threw that on a belt sander, sanded that right back, took about 30 mil off it. Still looks good though, looks factory. You'd never realize unless you compared it to a standard one. That fixed that problem. But then you've got this intake pipe which goes from I think 3 inches to the front of the turbo, which is 4 inches. So you were never going to be able to do that by having this pipe going right down to the front of the turbo. So I found a silicone which goes from 4 inches to 3. And I think we can fix it by getting this pipe and just cutting it off. Find out where we need to cut it, and then that pipe can just basically go straight into that silicone. The other one I just touched on before relates to the overflow coolant bottle here. I'm probably gonna have to find like a 90-degree fitting and then use a different hose, or just trim this hose to suit, we'll see. But that hose in itself kind of gets in the way of where the intake is gonna be, so look, that's another issue. But let's pop underneath and I'll show you what's going on down there. So underneath we can get a look at our oil drain, which I've installed, but have a look at the turbo, which is right here. You can see the outlet of the turbo. I've got a silicone on there, but it's pointing right at the side of the engine bay. So straight away I've had to work out, how am I going to fix that? So I've got like an angled silicone. I think it's like a 30-degree angle, which will hopefully, allow us to turn that intake ducting pipe and sort of shoot it downwards and make sure it's not hitting the side of the engine bay. I've got this whole hotside cooling kit, which runs from the turbo to the intercooler. So that's gonna come down the side of the engine here. It's then going to jump through here, it comes down and then it comes along here, does a U-turn, and then this is where the intercooler is kind of going to be sitting. It's just sitting in the bottom there, not in its right location. Now, thankfully, the intercooler is not going to be that difficult because there is a ton of space in here. If I just pull it out of the way, I'll show you again what I've had to do to make things fit. There was a bolt here that came through from the front bumper that was really long, so I basically just ground it down to get it out of the way. Same thing here with the power steering cooler brackets. Yeah, these bolts stuck out quite a long way. There's one there, one here. Just ground them back, so they're out of the way. With this power steering cooler as well, I modified the brackets. So these were actually very easy to modify too. You'll see it better on this one. There were 2 holes. Previously, it was attached to the car using this bolt hole in this location here. So that spaced everything forward, and it spaced this cooler, too far out from the condenser here and sort of fouled where the intercooler was going to sit. So I just cut these brackets down, and there was already an existing mounting hole here, which was previously sitting at about here. You can just slide this whole bracket in and use that second hole, cut the rest of the bracket off. Did that on both of them. Here's the other one there. And yeah, it just moved that whole cooler right up against the condenser, which is really, saving us a lot of space. And after clearancing the air dam on this front bumper a little bit, you can fit this stock cooler down here with tons of space. So we can mount this in the front, plenty of space behind it for this oil cooler for the transmission. And yeah, plenty of space for that power steering cooler. It's not going to be touching there. This is going to be sitting across a bit further like that, probably somewhere like this. It is looking very cool though. A lot of people were impressed when I posted a picture on Instagram the other day. It really is starting to shape up and look like a factory Intech VCT turbo, and that's really the look I was going for.
Flash flooding is impacting Brisbane roads as ex-tropical cyclone Alfred continues to bring heavy rain across parts of southeast Queensland. The system is weakening as it moves inland, but widespread flooding remains a major concern as river systems across both affected states continue to rise.
Righty, so a few days have passed. I'm doing some intercooler mounting at the moment, but we've got Cyclone Alfred here, or the aftermath of it anyway. A lot of rain, a lot of wind, but thankfully came through completely unscathed. This is a look at one of the brackets here for the passenger side. Mounts up really nicely so that the bracket sort of comes up here and will bolt in through the front of this front support here, crash bar or whatever you call it. We'll be able to pop this bumper off, get this eggshell sort of plastic off as well, and then drill a hole straight through top of there, straight through the top of here, and then that'll mount on there beautifully. I just need to come up with a system for this driver's side, and then hopefully try and incorporate another mount in for this transcooler as well. So look, let's try and suss this out. I don't really have a concrete plan here at the moment, just winging it and seeing what we can do. Okay, we've got the intercooler mounted up, and I'm actually really happy with how this turned out. This is the first time I've done anything like this, making custom brackets. I simply went to Bunnings, got some 30mm alloy flat bar. I think it was like a 1 meter bar, got 2 of them, and that was enough to sort of have a couple of goes at making some brackets to fit this thing up. It is nice and rigid. With the bracket on the passenger side, it's attached here at the top of the crash bar. But also, as you saw, there was like a little L bracket here under the bottom, just to sort of strengthen that. Matches up with both of the bolt holes on the intercooler. On the driver's side, I've just done the top mounting bracket. There's a second one hiding down here behind the crash bar that's not actually attached, but it is still nice and firm. And I mean, that pipe there is going to join in here anyway and kind of hold that as well. So I think it's looking really good. With the oil cooler, I got also from Bunnings, I think it was like 12mm alloy flat bar in black. So bonus, didn't have to paint that one. So I've got it attached to the top of this radiator support panel. Attaches to the oil cooler, comes down here and then attaches, as you can see, into the lower part of the radiator support panel. The other side here, the bracket literally attaches again to the top, but it doesn't go all the way down to the bottom. It just bolts in here to the top of the cooler, and that's kind of enough to hold that side and stop it from flapping around as it probably would do. So as I mentioned, the challenge from here is getting this intercooler piping from the intercooler to the intake, which is going to send it through this sheet of metal here under the headlight. I'll run you through that in a minute as to my ideas, and there's two ways I think we can go about it. I'd really appreciate your feedback. But for now, I reckon we're going to go for a test fire. Start the engine. Now, of course, you know, this plumbing is not plumbed up from the turbo to the engine, so like there's not going to be any boost going to the engine, but I really just want to run it for a bit to get the oil circulating, get the engine not too hot, but just get the water and the oil circulating, make sure there's no leaks. I have attached the first section of a BA Falcon XR6 turbo exhaust. So we've got the cat and the first little section of pipe, but that's it. So it's essentially going to be starting this thing with straight pipes. But yeah, just making sure that can run it long enough to not piss the neighbors off, but make sure that there's no fluids leaking out of this thing from anywhere. All right, this is a little bit nerve-wracking. We need to load our tune-up and enable the injectors again because I had them disabled just so I could crank it a few weeks ago and make sure that there was oil actually going through the turbo. So yes, I have tested that. There is oil going through the turbo, so that's good. We're not making any boost this time. It's just going to be starting the engine, getting everything spinning, letting it run for a minute or two, depending on how loud it is, and then we'll kill it, get out, check for leaks. It's pretty loud. It is running very rich at the moment. I'm not going to let this run too long because that's very loud. Let's hop out. We'll check everything, particularly the oil drain. I want to make sure that's not leaking. But yeah, I don't want to piss my neighbors off because that was very loud. Sounded like a tractor. All right, let's have a look. Everything on top of the turbo here looks fine. There's a bit of heat in that already. No water or oil coming out of there. So look, that is a successful test fire, guys. Looks like everything's still dry. Yeah, no oil, no coolant. Just very loud. So while we're here, we may as well talk about the intake situation. We have this pipe here that goes down. I'm not going to attach it, but it basically attaches to there. And the other end of the hose or the pipe sits down there just beside the battery, right? So what we need to do is go from there to here. And the problem is, on a factory B-Series turbo, you have this alloy pipe. What am I doing? I've got it the wrong way around. There you go. If we try and line that up with the hose visually, that's kind of what it does, but it goes under the battery tray. There's basically going to be like a huge chunk of metal, probably about starting here, down to about here. So probably cutting like that along here, and then probably here somewhere cutting like a big square out and taking it out. So the issue I have with doing that is obviously that you're removing something structural from the car. I don't know how critical this panel is. Obviously you've got the frame coming through here for the crash bar, but that's not really affected. This is just kind of sheet metal for the headlight. So you're removing some of that. I do have issues with that. So if anyone has done this before, you know, I'd really appreciate your thoughts in the comments, your opinions, and also your knowledge. If we don't cut there, like here's the standard pipe from the intercooler, right? It comes here. The other idea I've got, which I don't know how feasible it is, I think it'll work, is if you were to cut this back a little bit, right? What I thought we could do is that you would have an intake pipe come along and then go down a little bit, because there's actually a hole right here, which if we have a look at this pipe here, right? If you sort of hold this up, it almost fits through that gap. You know, with a little bit of clearancing, or, you know, just bending the metal out of the way slightly, a 2 1/4 inch pipe nearly fits through that gap. You could use a 90 here, use some silicone to join them, and then run like a 60-degree one that comes out of that hole and could potentially line up with where this pipe is, which is kind of like about there is where it's going to be. I reckon that would almost work. And you know what, I'm probably going to buy those pipe sections anyway and the joiners just to see if it can, because I would feel a damn sight better about just kind of bending this out of the way a little bit to fit a 2 1/4 inch pipe through there, and really not having to modify much else to do it rather than cutting this. But do let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, because it is kind of uncharted territory for me. But this is really the sticking point, whether we go here or here. That's really what's holding up the rest of this from running and, you know, the engine getting boost. I need to hook up a Mac valve for boost control. I need to do that as well. But really, that's it. I need to run the oil cooler lines back to here for the transmission cooler. But otherwise, like, that's all we've got left. And then we have to go to get an exhaust, and then we're pretty much done. So yes, we're going to leave it here for this week, guys. I really appreciate your patience when it comes to my upload and video release schedule. My time on this project is extremely limited. We're talking just a couple of hours per week. And also, because we've had a cyclone come through recently, about a week ago now, Australia Post is just cooked when it comes to their delivery time. So I ordered this kind of 60-degree silicone bend to hopefully fix the issue with the turbo outlet facing the side of the engine bay. Cut this down, hopefully, you know, circle it back out of the way. Took about 3 weeks for this thing to turn up, which is incredible, or terrible, I should say, considering it was just being posted from 2 suburbs away from where I live. Took 3 weeks to get here. So that is ridiculous, but we've got it now, so I can start sussing out that, hopefully get the piping from the turbo to the intercooler sorted, and then it's really just that hot side piping, what we do under the headlight here. It's really a huge issue from what I can see. I'm still scratching my head. I am suffering financially at the moment as well, so I'm waiting for YouTube to pay me on the 21st so I can order some of that intake piping to sort that out. First world problems, I know all about it, but I do have a budget with this project and we are really down there, close to zero at the moment. I've got like $28 in the account, so selling parts on Marketplace to get some cash as well, to buy those intake pieces and just start playing around and figuring out what to do. But that's really the last major hurdle. Everything else, as I said, is done. I also need to re-gap the spark plugs, gap them down a little bit for boost, but the turbo's installed, the clearance is all looking really good. I have a plan as well for this overflow coolant tank bottle as well, which I'll tell you about next time. You know, a lot of the things that we've dealt with on this build have scared me initially, but there's always been a solution, so hopefully it's the case with this. Usually, you know, every part we've bolted up to this, from the BA turbo onto this, has kind of fitted 80 or 90% of the way. There's just always this extra 20%. And it's that 20% that of customization that kills you or makes you really nervous. So that's it, guys. If you really enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, because my subscriber rate does not rise very much. Appreciate any support I can get. Comment, like the video. Have a good one. I'll see you next time. Exciting.